All right, I need everybody to sit up in your seats. I need you to put your phones away for the next several minutes. And if you could just do me a favor and just look this way, that would be absolutely awesome. See, it's so good to see everybody's face. So good to see you there, see you smiling. That's not a smile. No, I'm just playing. To see you smiling and looking at everybody, it's happy to be here. I'm glad that you're here tonight. We're going to finish out our series tonight on chains. So we've been in this incredible series over the last several weeks, and we have been talking about chains. And what we've done, because Christmas is how many days away? 27. See, I knew someone would know that. 27 days away. What we did is we decided to look at the Christmas classic, A Christmas Carol. And what we did is we opened up the very first week talking about Joseph Marley, and we talked about the ghosts that were going to come and visit Ebenezer Scrooge. And if you remember what we talked about how Joseph Marley warned Ebenezer Scrooge to be very careful what you do in life, because he had all these chains that had chained him down, and he said, I built these chains link by link and yard by yard when I was alive, Ebenezer, so be very careful what you do. And then after that, we talked about the ghost of Christmas past and how we can't allow the things of the past to haunt us because God covers those. Jesus came and he covered our past. 2 weeks ago, we talked about being in the present, the ghost of Christmas present. We talked about what is it right now that we need to do, that we are responsible with our present, why we are here, what we are doing, what God has blessed us with. And so tonight we are going to continue on with the last ghost of this series, and we're going to talk about the ghost of Christmas future. And future is interesting, man. When we talk about the future, that's an interesting thing. And it's fascinating to us to think about the future. And I think one of the biggest reasons it's so fascinating for us to think about the future is this. It's because we don't know what's going to happen. The future is unknown. And so it's really fascinating because we live in a society where we want to know everything. Everything we want to know. See, some of you, you're back here cheating during that game and you're looking it up on Google and they're shouting out the answers and they're telling, who would that be? I don't know who that was. But he was looking it up and he was seeing the answers. Why? Because we want answers right now. How many, when someone sends you a text, you want them to answer you right now? Like if it's even 3 seconds later, you're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why are you taking so long? I just sent you this text. And they're like, I just went to get a drink. No, you're not allowed to drink. You send me a text right back. Because we want answers now. And the fascinating thing about the future is we don't know about the unknown. And I believe that's something that fascinates us. I believe that's something that we are really into because we don't know what happens. And in this story, we have this ghost of Christmas future that comes to Ebenezer Scrooge, and he always looks like the Grim Reaper. He's got a big hood on, and he's like floating around. If you like the Muppets one, this big creature kind of floating around, taking him scene by scene throughout and showing him the mistakes that he made in the past, in the present, ultimately got him to the ghost of the future and what ends up happening to him. That he doesn't leave a legacy behind that people are respective of. They actually are proud that he is dead. He dies alone, miserable, with nothing. And that is his future. Now, we're not going to talk a lot about that and about what could happen, but we're so fascinated sometimes about what could happen that, we have this desire. So, like, sometimes, we'll play around with what the future could hold. There's people that they go to psychics, or they might, go and say a fortune teller, or they may mess with the Ouija boards or tarot cards. I'm going to tell you right now, you don't need to mess with any of that stuff, any of it. See, when I was younger, there used to be a lady that was on TV named Sister Cleo. Y'all know who Sister Cleo is? She'd be like, you call Sister Cleo, she tell you your fortune. She ended up being some chick that lived in Florida that wasn't even from the Caribbean, that was like just scamming people out of their money. Totally. And so you don't need to be doing that. But I remember being in school sometimes, and if you remember, how many of you ever remember making one of these? You remember making one of these? Like, and these when we were kids, we called them fortune tellers or decision makers, but like fortune tellers, like they were really fun. And Ryan and I made this big one today so that we could kind of show you. And what we would do with this is you would especially when you were younger, you would go to your classmates and you would go to people and you would be like, hey, this is how it works. You went up to someone, you're like, hey, pick a color. And then there's colors on top and you would do the color and then you would do something and then you'd be like, look in there, there's a number, you get a number thing, and then you would open up the flap and it would tell you your fortune. And I don't know about you, but sometimes we would write some crazy things in there. We'd go up to people, we write it, and be like, oh, this says you got to give me all your lunch money. And they're like, I do not. You're like, well, the fortune teller, the piece of paper said you have to, so you better give it to me. And we'd be like, oh man, I got to give you my lunch. And we'd give someone lunch money. Or if there was a girl we really liked, we'd go up to her and we'd be like, hey, pick a color and go through it. Be like, you're going to marry me and you're going to love me for the rest of my life. We would do that and we would use a fortune teller and we would go we would go and we would do these things all of the time, selling fortunes because we wanted to know, and we messed around and we played around with these goofy things, having fun, wanting to know about the future because we thought that the future was so important. And obviously, I don't know your future. I don't know what's going to happen with you or what's going to go on. But we have fun with these things, and I can't see the future. But what's really interesting for us is that it actually talks in the Bible in 1 Peter. It talks about insight that Jesus plans for your future, which is really, really interesting. So throughout this series, we've been looking in 1 Peter. It's kind of been the premise of our verses. So we've been going through, but the premise has been here in 1 Peter. And tonight we're going to tie some of those passages that we have visited over the last month together. And we're going to look at it and see the big picture here now. We're taking all the pieces, putting the puzzle together, and looking at the big picture of what God is saying about our future. Now, for instance, I am able to indicate a few things about my future. When I moved to the area, my hair was nice and black. Black. Here now, 8 years later, it's black and white. This is salt and pepper, okay? And so I knew, though, in my 20s that what was going to happen because of my dad's genetics and because of how he started getting gray and salt and pepper hair in his 20s. So when I was about 20, I started getting it, and I was ashamed of it at first. I'd be like, oh, no, we're just for men. We're going to go to Walmart, and we're going to do this just for men. And Bethany would, dye my hair black because I was ashamed of it. I was like, no. And then I hit 30. I'm like, I don't give a care in the world. I don't care, because y'all be like, you're old anyway, so it didn't matter if my hair looked old or not. So it didn't even matter. So I was like, you know what? But I knew because of my genetics and my family what could happen. So sometimes we have an idea of what can happen, but we don't know the details of what could happen. If there's someone in school and he's a really big dude, he's huge and he's mean, I have an idea. If I go up and I smack him in the back of the head, I have an idea that he's probably going to stick me in a trash can somewhere in the school or might even stick me in the locker. I can put that future together. And so we have to have an understanding that part of the future is we have an understanding of what can happen, but we don't have the details. And, I've talked about, before about my love of wanting to be in control. My need of wanting to control my life and the decisions I make and where I go and kind of mapping it out and how it all happens. And what's funny is what it says in Proverbs. So before we look in Peter, we're going to look in Proverbs because it's really interesting what it says about our plans. This is what it says in Proverbs 16, verse 9. We can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. It's interesting. We can make plans, but the Lord determines our steps. Meaning I can have this all mapped out, where I'm going to go to school, who I'm going to date, where we're going to live, how many kids we're going to have, what everything's going to look like. I can have that mapped out in my mind, but ultimately it's God determining where I get to through my steps. Because think about it. In order to get somewhere, if I'm walking, I got to take steps. But the Bible says that God has placed those steps out before me so that I can get to it. And his plan may not look like ours. It may not even look close to ours. But he's going to get us where we need to be when we need to be there. And the more we walk with Jesus, the more trust we put into it. The older I get and the more I fall in love with Jesus, the more I understand that I need to trust him. that his plan is going to be good and that he's going to get us where we need to be. Now, like I said before, sometimes what God has in store for our lives is not what we thought. But the Bible actually talks about that as well, because in Isaiah 55, 8-9, it says, my thoughts are nothing like your thoughts. My ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. And I'm going to park it right here for a little bit tonight because I want to talk about this. Because this verse reminds me that God's way is better than my way. I want you to understand that, because sometimes we get confused. But God's way is better than my way. Now, that's hard for our brains to understand. It's hard for our minds to understand that, because when you're going somewhere, it's only natural to create the way to get there. Like, you know how to get to where you need to be. And so, like, if I were to say to you, like, how many of you know how to get to McDonald's from here? We'd be like, all right, cool. I'm not like, how many know how to get to Wendy's? But how many of y'all know how to get Chick-fil-A from here? Yep, everybody's hands better go up right now. Like, I know how to get to Chick-fil-A from here. And so I know you go out, you jump on the boulevard, you go down, you go, right there, Target, boom, make a left, boom, it's right there. So I know the way to get there. But what if God says, nah, what you got to do, Micah, is you got to take off, and instead of going left down the boulevard, you got to go right. I'd be like, whoa. First of all, I know how to get to Chick-fil-A, okay? I hear that chicken calling, okay? Like, I know the direction to get to where I need to be, all right? So, like, first of all, God, you need to chill out because I know where I'm going. And God's like, no, you're missing it. Because my way is not the way that I'm going to get you to where you need to be, but you're just not going to go your way. You're going to go my way because my way is better than your way. See, if I go out on my way, how do I know I'm not going to get in a car accident? Or how do I know that I'm not going to sit in traffic? How do I know something's not bad's going to happen? I don't know. But God knows that, Micah, if you go your own way, you're going to get messed up. Something's going to happen, and you shouldn't go your own way. You need to get to where I need to get you to. And so we have this concept of saying, okay, God, we have to think your thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Your ways are higher than our ways. So I need to get to where I need to be, and I'll get there. And his way looks different, but it's good. And it's important to mention that his way might be crazy. It might be crazy. For example, if God was like, listen, I want you to go to Florida. You're going to Disney World. Going to Universal, you're going to the beach, you go to Florida. So naturally our instincts will be like, okay, we live in Pennsylvania. That is a long drive. We don't really want to go drive all the way there. So naturally what we would do is we would go to Pittsburgh, we would jump on an airplane and we would fly down there because that makes sense, right? Makes sense to fly from Pittsburgh to Florida. Why? Because it's a very long way to get there. But what if God was like, no, hold up. No. You're not taking the airplane, you're taking the horse and buggy. You'd be like, excuse me? What is a buggy? Like some of you would be going down to Martin's and jumping in the cart and be like, let's go. Not that type of buggy, okay? We're talking like a horse and a buggy. Like a horse is gonna pull you all the way from Pennsylvania to Florida. You'd be like, no, that doesn't make any sense at all, none. But see, sometimes when God has a way for us to go, it's like, But God's like, listen, in order for you to get to where you need to in your future, you need to go the way I have for you. And we're like, nah, I'm going to go my way. But can I tell you, every time I choose my way to get to where I want to go and not God's way, what I'm doing is I'm creating an opportunity for me to be me and not allow God to be God. I'm creating this opportunity for me to go where I want to go, do what I want to do, and not be where God wants me to be. And it's something that it's not the way. If I'm a Christian, I'm serving God, I got to put my trust in him. But if God says, get in a horse and buggy and drive yourself from Pennsylvania all the way down to Florida, then you're going to go. Why? It might seem crazy. But let me tell you this. The best way is not always the easiest way, but it's still the best way. Let me say that again. When God tells us to go somewhere and do something, the best way might not be the easiest way, but it's still the best way. Because if God's telling us to do it, it's the best. God's not going to give you something that's just okay. God is going to give you the best way to get to where you need to be and where you need to go. No matter how crazy it seems, God's way is higher than our way. That's what the Bible says. When you travel with someone, how many of you ever travel with like your parents and you just like, you get your phone out, you put your headphones on, and that's it. You just lay back and you're like, yep, you're driving. It's like your parents are your chaperones. You're like, hey, can you stop and get me something to drink down the streets? And like, let's go. And you take off and you get your snacks, but you don't care. Why? Because what's happening is you're trusting the driver. You trust the driver in the car to get you to the destination that you need to get to. Whenever we go places and Ryan and I are driving vans, you're trusting in our ability to drive a van. I heard that. You're trusting in my ability to drive a 15-passenger van and take you to where you need to be. When we get on the bus on the way home, you're trusting that our bus driver is going to get you where you need to be and where you need to go. The same is true, check this out, the same is true when it comes to following after God for our future. When you travel God's way, you must trust that he's going to get you to where you need to be, the perfect way that you need to be there. If you keep following him, a great destination awaits you. Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work for good of those that love God who are called according to his purpose. As you follow God's way in your life, don't believe that the second that God is against you and is going to take you somewhere where you don't need to be. And maybe messing with your thinking a little bit and maybe messing with your plans for the future, but ultimately when God's going to get you where he needs to get you, he's going to get you there the right way. But see, we have this trust issue, Like, God, I don't really know because, like, your way seems so out there. Your way seems so weird and different that I don't know if I want to do that. Well, the Bible says in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 that we need to trust in the Lord with all of our heart, lean not on my understanding, but in all my ways acknowledge his way, and he's going to direct my path. He's going to get me there. See, I love how the Bible says here that we need to acknowledge him in all of his ways. Acknowledge actually means, from the dictionary, to recognize the rights, authority, and status of. So we need to let God have the final say when it comes to that future and getting to where we need to be. We need to get to where we need to be. Now, we say, God, all right, I'm going to get there, and you're going to get me there. And sometimes God's going to say something to you, and you're not going to like it. And sometimes when people say things to us that we don't like, we start to have this little issue, like when your mom says, like, no, you can't go out tonight. Or you can't go hang out with your friends. Or we're saying, like, you can't have this, you can't have that. Like, and, sometimes we're like, oh, okay, like, mom said I can't go out, that's fine. Other times we're like, you can't tell me what to do? You ever, like, look at your parents like, who are you? Like, your parents. Like, we brought you into this world. But, like, we get this attitude, and sometimes we're like that with God. We get like that with God. We're like, God, who do you think you are? And sometimes I think God's like, I created you. Like, what are you doing, homie? Like, you're gonna yell at me? Like, you're gonna disagree with me? Think about that. It makes no sense. We're mad at God because we wanna go do something, God shuts it down, and we have this way that we wanna take our life. God says, nope, you're not gonna do it. So we we get upset, we get mad, and we start disagreeing. We have all these problems, and we have this issue where, okay, God, how do you know that your plans are the better plans? Says, and since my plans aren't your plans, God, then am I wrong? And, we don't like to be wrong. We like to be right. We like everybody else to be wrong because it makes us look good when we're right and they're wrong. And then sometimes when they're right when they're right and I'm wrong, I don't like that. I start to get I don't like to be wrong. I like Kaylee likes to win. That's one thing. Kaylee does not like to lose. Akil's used to lose, and he loses all the time. So we have to have this understanding that there are certain people that desire to win and certain people that try to desire to win. But we have to have this understanding here that when it comes to God, we get this concept, well, if God's plan is not my plan, well, does that mean that God's mad at me? Well, maybe that mean that God is against me because he and I disagree. So maybe this concept of God's plan is not my plan for my future, so maybe he is mad at me because he's not allowing me to do what I want to do. Or maybe God doesn't like me anymore. Maybe God hates me. Maybe because I want to go here or I want to date that guy and God says no. Well, maybe God hates me. That's why he doesn't want me to date that person. Or maybe God, I want to work at this place, but God doesn't want me to work there. Well, maybe God hates me, so I'm not going to work there. And see, we live in a society that believes that disagreement means you hate me. Let's pause right there because I want everyone to understand me right now, especially your generation. Disagreement doesn't mean hate. It simply means that we don't agree. Simply means that we don't agree. That's it. If I don't agree with you on something, it doesn't mean I hate you. But we live in this society that's saying, listen, if you don't agree with everything, you must hate it. No, I just don't agree with it. Like everybody knows, I'm from Pittsburgh. I love the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love the Pittsburgh Penguins. I love that. Ryan and I will argue back and forth. We'll argue about sports. We disagree about that. Doesn't mean I hate him. We'll argue about pizza. Literally, we do argue about pizza. We'll have disagreements back and forth about pizza. Just because we disagree doesn't mean that I hate Ryan. It just means that we don't agree with that. But so many times when God shuts us down and says, I don't want that for your future, we think that God hates us. And that's not how this goes. That's not how this goes. Because you might feel like God is disagreeing and hating you because he's not giving you what you want in your future, but simply Romans 8:3 says this, what shall we say to these things? If God is for us, then who is against us? So if God is not against us, what is going on? Why are we having this issue? Why is this issue of the future so important to us? Why is this whole thing that we've been talking about so important? So you've been talking about chains. How Ebenezer Scrooge has these chains that he is dragging from the decisions he made in the past that came to his present, where he didn't agree with what was going on in his present, so he dragged him into the future, and ultimately, he had carried that with him. Do you know that God has set you free so that you don't have to carry things from your past and your present to your future? You don't have to carry those mistakes that you've made, that guilty conscience. You don't have to carry that into tomorrow because God has already taken care of it today. And if God has already taken care of it today, you don't have to deal with it in the future. And that's what's so amazing about God, but we have to be very careful. We expect those who are for us to support us everything that we do. Right, guys? Like, if you're like, you got to support me in everything that I am, and it's only natural if someone is really for us or agree with us. However, that is not the case in a lot of things. All right, time for some honesty. I need some honesty from you guys. You can't lie. You're in church. Can't lie. Can't lie. You're in church. How many of you have ever in your past, or maybe in your present, ever, like thrown a temper tantrum? Everybody's like, yep, everybody, yep. So listen, let's go back a couple years, because I really hope that, you have not thrown a temper tantrum lately. But remember when you were little and your parents maybe didn't give you that extra cookie that you wanted, and you weren't wise enough to understand that if you were eating another cookie, it might make you sick. And so you just decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to throw a temper tantrum, and I'm going to get my cookie, and I'm going to throw a bad attitude. I'm going to get upset. And it's crazy. People throw tantrums in weird ways. People are crazy. You see kids, some kids will just begin to stamp their feet and get all mad and stuff like this. There are other kids who will get so upset they'll hold their breath. I'm like, yo, at least you're being quiet. At least you're shutting up right now. And not there are other kids who scream and hit and punch and all these crazy things. And we'll throw a tantrum. Why? Because we don't get what we want the way we want it to be. And we're like, God, I'm not happy, Mom. You wouldn't let me have that. And then when you get older, you have to understand hey, man, my parents are trying to protect me. If I had that extra cookie, I would not feel well. I was just sharing this with Stephanie. So just this past weekend, Bethany and I, we went to spend time with my family. And one night, we went out to this Christmas village place about an hour from our house. It was really beautiful, it had all these things. So they had all these stores everywhere. And they had this one store that sold the freshest, most amazing chocolate chip cookies that you could get. I'm telling you, they were warm and gooey, just had the crisp on the edge. Perfect. And so I go up and I tried one and I'm like, oh, this is good. And I was like, give me some more. So I paid for some more. And then we went and walked around and we eating a bunch of stuff. And naturally, I ate a lot. My stomach was rah. And I'm like, I better not eat anymore. But I couldn't help myself. I'm not gonna lie. So what I did is before we leave, I go and get more cookies. I walk up to the window and I didn't not one, not two. I was like, can I have a half a dozen? And I just they brought them out and it was oh, I placed them in my hand and I began to eat them and I was like, oh, this is so good. But then we got in the car and I was like, my stomach really hurts. because I ate too many cookies. And I also ate some candy corn, and I also ate some chocolate from the chocolate shop. And yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And so like I threw down, and it was like I wasn't feeling well. And when I was a kid, my parents would guard me from feeling sick. But as I got older, I just got dumb. And I was just like, I'm just gonna eat more. But see, when we throw a temper tantrum, our parents are trying to guard us from something that potentially can happen to us, but we don't see that as that. We see it as something where they're keeping us from having what we need. See, when I grew up, I got spanked as a kid. I don't know if you can believe that, but I got spanked as a kid, all right? I was bad. Like, in my warped mentality, I thought everybody got spanked. Like, I thought everybody before they went to bed, they got spanked. I thought it was like a tradition every family had. Like, you're going to bed tonight, boop, good night, like, hey, yeah, going to bed. But like, and when I get spanked, I'm not, like, it was bad. And I remember it being like, as a kid, I'm like, my mom and my dad, whoever, usually it was my dad, and he would spank me, and I would be like, what is going on? And my dad would always say something. And I didn't understand it until I got older. He'd always say to me, son, you have to understand this hurts me more than this hurts you. But when you're older, you'll understand. And I got older, and I'm like, man, that made so much sense. It's not like my dad wanted to discipline me. It's not like he wanted to, but he did it, and he navigated me in order to help me to learn to not do certain things so that I wouldn't be like that. And what I've understood, the same true as God. I mean, we're his children. He is our father. And sometimes we feel like he's against us, but he's saying, listen, I'm disciplining you. I'm shutting the door. I'm closing it off. I'm not allowing you to go this way because I have something better. And if you go this way, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get sick. You're not going to be where you need to be. And so God closes and navigates our future a complete different way than what we had planned on. And in fact, maybe God has said something to you and you throw a temper tantrum spiritually. God isn't doing things the way you want him to do. You're upset. So what you do is you go and you throw a temper tantrum and saying, this is not the way that I want to have. Walking back to the story of the ghost of the Christmas future, what's interesting is Ebenezer Scrooge says this in the Christmas Carol. He says this about the ghost of Christmas future. He says, I fear you more than any ghost that I have seen yet. Oh, that's good. He says, Scrooge says, I fear you more than any other ghost that I have seen yet. And I read that and I'm thinking, whoa, like, what is the deal with that? Like, why is that? Because, we talked about the ghost of Christmas future is this grim reaper, scary looking guy, certainly not an image that like we want to spend time hanging out with. And Scrooge is filled with fear because he doesn't know what to expect. At the same time, he does know what to expect. And that scares him even more. Is sometimes we know what we are doing. We know that we are going outside the way that God has said to go. And we know that, something's going to happen. And I know that I'm not doing it. Guys, I've told you this 100 times. Ryan has told you this 100 times. When we were teenagers, we did not follow after Jesus the way we should have. And that's some of our biggest regrets. Some of our biggest regrets is that I have friends that I could have brought to youth group, that I could have brought to church, that I could have told about Jesus, that I didn't because I was going my own path, my own way. And it led me to trouble, and it led me to places I shouldn't been, doing things I shouldn't do with people I should have never been with. Because the future is scary, and Scrooge is really forced to ask look at this and say, what is this legacy that I'm going to have? Of course, he knows the answer. He knows what happens because of the decisions he made. And you know what's interesting when you read this book, Charles Dickens that wrote it, he doesn't provide really much to the answer of really what is left other than he wakes up, he makes things right, and he goes upon his life. But we don't hear any more about anything else about Scrooge. So the ghost of Christmas future calls him to answer, what is it really that I'm doing with my life? And tonight, students, listen to me. What I want for you, what God wants for you, is he wants for you to have a future that is filled with the love and grace of who he is. He wants you to be successful. He wants you to go and do those things that he has placed deep within your heart. He wants you to go the right way. He doesn't want you to be fearful of what could happen in the future and be scared of what is coming. Because so often we're scared of the unknown. We're scared of what we know. And some of us, we know what we've done. We know that there are consequences that are going to come back around for the actions that we've done. And we're just waiting for them. And we're terrified and we're scared. And we're saying, listen, I don't know what's going to happen. But what we recognize is that we have a God that loves us. And that when we ask for his forgiveness for the things that we've done, he forgives us. And he says, listen, you're forgiven. You're set free. Remember, we talked about those chains in 1 Peter, and we talked about how he sets us free from the things that hold us, that we are free from burdens and bondages that have held us down. And what's crazy about all of these ghosts of past, present, and future is that if we let the chains go in one, we let the chains go in all of them. Let me explain that to you. If I have something that's holding me back right now from what God wants, if I let it go now and ask him to forgive me in this moment, then tomorrow, when I've asked to let that go, that was my past, that he had set me free. And then I'm living in the present of being set free. And the next day will be the future where I'm set free, that I don't have to worry about whether or not this or that or any of these things. Why? Because the chains have been let go. The chains are gone. I've been set free. See, understand that the past, the present, and the future ultimately are all within the spectrum of knowing who God is. And they all affect one another. But what I love about God is this terminology called omnipresent, meaning that he is all of time. He is all future, past, present, everything. God is in all of this time development. He circumferences all of it. So God has us covered. But are we covering ourselves? Are we asking God to help with our past, our present, and our future? These guys, the future can be a scary thing. And it can be something that we fear, but we don't have to be afraid. Because God's ways are higher than ours. And where he wants us to go and where he wants to take us is so much more important than us worrying about where we will end up. So across this room, if you could bow your heads and close your eyes for just a few minutes. Jeffrey, if you could just come and play something simple on the acoustic for me, I would appreciate it. With all heads bowed, with eyes closed, with nobody looking around, being respectful of one another tonight. So we've been in this series talking about chains. We opened up talking about this story that we have found called the Christmas Carol. And we talked about all of these things that he has dealt with, that Ebenezer Scrooge has dealt with, and what has happened and what has gone on. And we said, you know what? Well, we're going to look at these chains and we're going to look at these things and we're going to look at what has happened. And we've discovered some certain things about ourselves, about the decisions that we have made and the things that we have done that we have not been proud of, that have held us back because of what has happened in the past. And we've allowed that past to ultimately dictate to us who we've become in this present moment. And then we've moved forward and we've carried that on, and we carry that burden, that chain into the future, and we've continually living it out. We sing a song oftentimes that our chains are gone, I've been set free. That we don't have to worry about our past. We don't have to worry about right now. And we don't have to worry about our future. See, what I love about who God is and what God says, we find in 1 Peter. Remember I said we're going to go back to this in circumference. Everything that we have here and what we're talking about. Because in 1 Peter, it says that you are a chosen people. Remember, we talked about this. You're chosen by God. Why? Because you're a royal priesthood, meaning that he has called you a Christian and you're called to do some amazing things. But he is saying to you tonight, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, meaning that you belong to God and he belongs to you. Once you weren't his people, but now you are. Once you have not received mercy, but now you do. Man, we're God's
God's people. That's the greatest title, the greatest honor that we can have, that we're God's people. So tonight you might be in here, and it might have been several weeks ago we talked about something that held you down, or it might actually be something that's holding you down now, or it might be that you're scared of the future and the direction that God is taking you and you're not sure about it. Well, tonight I want to tell you that we can lay these things down and we don't have to allow them to affect us. So with all heads bowed and eyes closed tonight, if you're here tonight and you're scared of your future, I just want you to lift your hand and put it down real quick. Man, hands going up all over this room. You're scared of the future. It's okay. Sometimes I'm scared of the future as well. Go ahead, pivot. Hands down, hands up, hands up, hands up. Everybody all across this room, we're scared. I see you, I see you, I see you guys. I get it. Well, tonight, what I love about this is we don't have to be scared because His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And the greatest thing that we can have an understanding that in all our ways, if we just love on God, He will direct us where we need to go. Man, that is just so gives us hope, so fulfilling. So if that's you tonight, I'm going to pray, and I want you to pray with me because I'm going to pray too because I get scared of the future too. So God, we're here tonight, and sometimes we're scared, God, because we don't know what's coming. God, I don't know which way to go. I don't know the right decision. I don't know what friends to have sometimes. I don't know what relationship to go in sometimes. I don't know how things are going to end up with my parents because of the situation at home. I don't know how things are going to go with my job because I'm struggling. I don't know what's going to happen as a senior. I'm getting ready to graduate and I got to pick a school. I don't know where to go. But God, I know that you can direct me in where I need to be. So God, I pray that tonight, then first and foremost, that you'll forgive me of the things that I have done. Forgive me for the mistakes that I have made. God, set me free from those chains of fear tonight of the future. God, help me to trust in you more. Help me to love you more so that you can direct me in where I need to be. Because God, I want to be where you want me to be. It might not make sense. It might be hard. It might be difficult even at times to get there. But I'm going to get there because you have called me to. So God, tonight, allow me to live in freedom like I've never known, not being afraid. And I thank you for these things, what you have called me to. In Jesus' precious name.